Hello again. Welcome to the Davis Control Lab. I'm Geoff Wold, and this is Todd Reemtsma, and we are your lighting control gurus for Davis and Associates. So, one topic that we want to talk about today is embedded lighting control. So, Todd, let me just ask you, what are embedded controls?
Well, we talked a little bit about lighting controls earlier and the lighting control components. In that example, we were talking about devices that were outside of the lighting fixture
Right.
itself, power packs, relays, dimmers, sensors, etc. When we're talking about embedded lighting controls, we're talking about putting that all into the fixture. That now, simply by bringing the power to the fixture, perhaps some control wires, we now have that switch, we have that dimmer built right into the fixture. We might have that occupancy vacancy sensor built right into the fixture. We might have like the daylight sensor built right into the fixture itself.
Yeah.
So that's embedded lighting controls.
Yeah, so taking that power pack, that motion sensor, the dimmer, and building that all into one smaller device that goes into that fixture, which I guess leads me to like, why would you do that? What are the advantages of that?
Well, the advantage is going to be the flexibility. Certainly, when we look at from a contractor's point of view, if we've got all those components separately, now we have to run the power to the different devices. We have to install those different devices,
Mm-hmm.
separately. Perhaps additional wires. So that's going to like put it all into one fixture. That now that contractor simply has to run the power again, maybe data, depending on whether we're doing wired or
Mm-hmm.
wireless controls to that. But then there's the flexibility, Geoff. When we think about that classroom,
Yeah.
certainly the teacher is going to have an area at the front of the classroom. We're going to have that area over the students. If we've got some windows, we're going to have those fixtures that are going to be in that daylight zone.
Right.
So we can lay that out. Typically, with a lot of the embedded controls, it's going to be digital control. So we're able to assign those fixtures, those zones. One of the things that you might see is that like if a school or an office is going through some transitions, that they're going to change around that classroom or office space, and they're going to restructure those zones. Well, for the contractor, that means they're going to have to pull all new wire, etc. With the embedded lighting controls, that's simply a matter of changing the programming. Now that each of those fixtures can be put into
Yeah.
their new zones.
So you can rezone without having to rewire is kind of how I look at it. And when I get asked this question, I'm usually thinking about uh, how many zones of control are there, because it might not make sense to go embedded when there's one control zone, but in a classroom, which is kind of an easy example to use, you might have front and back control of the classroom and then daylighting control, and those might be perpendicular to each other, which means that's four zones or four switch legs, and that could be a lot of wiring when it comes to 0 to 10 volt. So that's when it starts to make sense to embed controls, whether it's wired or wireless, so that it starts to make sense from a labor point of view. Um, because usually the costs for an embedded system are going to be a little bit higher. So having that labor offset is a really important part of it.
Absolutely. And certainly the other aspect that we didn't even talk about was the emergency.
Yeah.
Just like that, we're going to have to bring that emergency power. And so now, if we have to do the additional components for the emergency fixtures, if we're doing it separately versus embedded,
Yeah.
another area where we can, save some, cost when we're talking a multiple zone, normal and emergency power.
And we're fortunate because we represent Acuity and they have great solutions for that emergency control. But always check with your local rep in terms of what is required for emergency control for their control system, because they might require some additional components. But that can be a huge advantage for a contractor to only have to pull one emergency circuit to all the fixtures and not have other devices that they have to install for it.
Absolutely. Certainly, embedded controls means an additional cost, but does mean a whole lot, of simplicity for installation and flexibility,
Right.
for the owner.
Yep. So that kind of wraps it up. If there's any questions, please put them in the comments below. Feel free to reach out to us, Geoff Wold and Todd Reemtsma from Davis.